Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave a very well-received speech to Congress this morning, making a forceful argument against a nuclear deal between Iran and the United States. We spoke with Oklahoma Congressman Tom Cole after that speech to talk about it and what may be the end of the gridlock over funding the Homeland Security Department. I spoke with the congressman as he was in the House chamber during the Prime Minister's speech afterwards on the phone and asked him to give us some perspective.
It was an extraordinarily powerful address and at a particularly critical moment, I think, in the history of the Middle East and certainly in the relationship between the United States and Israel on the one hand and Iran on the other. There's no question Prime Minister Netanyahu is an exceptionally gifted communicator, and he's somebody we've seen multiple times in Congress. His third address. He knows the audience well, and there's a genuine bipartisan support for the state of Israel, and so he got a very respectful, frankly enthusiastic response. And I think the message he was delivering is one that the administration needs to heed, and there's a great deal of skepticism on both sides of the aisle about the prospective deal with Iran, at least what we're hearing about at this point. And so it's good that he came here, I think, to deliver a warning and lay his concerns in front of the Congress. And, the administration, if it reaches an agreement, and there's no assurance yet that it will, would be well advised to do the same, because it would be absolutely inappropriate for the president to bind the country to a deal that the Congress didn't support.
Sir, let's talk about that a little bit more. As to the content of that speech, what was the most important message, and what impact do you think it will have on the Obama administration's negotiations with Iran over the nuclear program?
Well, I think the most important message is Iran is a regime that you can't trust. Look, there's a lot of respect for the Iranian people and an appreciation for their deep and ancient history. But this has been a regime that has consistently supported terrorism, frankly, killed American Marines in Beirut in the 1980s, that helped, fuel some of the attacks on American forces in Iraq after we had liberated them, and frankly, had done the Iranians a favor by getting rid of Saddam Hussein. And it continues to sponsor terrorism throughout the region. And they support the Assad regime in Syria. They're behind Hezbollah. They are a state sponsor of terrorism. So I think the point that let's see a behavior change before we expect them to keep their word in the deal is a point well made, and one that resonated very deeply with the members that were present.
You certainly got a rousing response. We're talking with Republican Representative Tom Cole from Oklahoma. Congressman, let's shift gears to the funding fight over Homeland Security Department. That's been tied up, of course, with the president's executive actions on immigration. Since the issue is now in federal court, you have advocated letting the courts decide and not hampering the Homeland Security Department. Do you expect the fight to end today?
I don't know if it'll end today, but I certainly expect it to end by Thursday. The time and the place of that, will be up to the speaker. But I think it's pretty clear how it's going to end. Look, every now and then you need to call a win a win. And when we began this fight, we said we wanted to make sure that the president didn't implement, what is an overarching, we think, unconstitutional legislative act. And we've succeeded in that, thanks to the courts. They've stopped it. The order that we were opposed to is not going to be implemented. I would expect this week we'll probably see another victory in that regard. I think the injunction that the federal judge laid down, he's not likely to lift. So I think that will continue. And we're actually in a more promising venue for a decisive decision than we would have been in Congress. We can do some things in the House, but frankly, in the Senate, they've not been able to even bring up what we did pass in the House for a debate. That's because of uniform Democratic opposition. And had they been able to, and had we somehow mustered the Democratic votes we needed, the president would have certainly vetoed the legislation in any event, and I doubt we could have overridden that veto. So this has always been a long shot fight in the House. So we ought to be very happy that we've got this into the courts, that the constitutionality of the president's action will be decided. And, he's lost quite a number of Supreme Court cases on these kinds of things. So I think rather than number one, putting the country at risk, number two, not paying men and women who we ask to do a tough job for us, and number three, fighting amongst ourselves when there's no reason to be in disagreement, we ought to let this matter go, get about the business of funding Homeland Security, where we have an underlying bill that we all agree on. It's a bipartisan, bicameral compromise, and then move on to other work.
Republican Representative Tom Cole from Oklahoma, thank you for your time today, sir.
Okay, thanks a lot.